Time for business news, and we begin with a huge climate summit. They're calling it the moment of truth. Energy Agency, the International Energy Agency, saying it's a pivotal choice for the oil industry. Cammy Knight, set the scene.
Hi, Gavin, that's right. It's the COP28 summit taking place in Dubai just next week. And the International Energy Agency has released a report saying that this is a moment of truth for the oil and gas industry, which needs to decide whether it wants to deepen the climate crisis or help fix it. The report shows that the oil industry currently only accounts for 1% of global investment in clean energy, while meanwhile being responsible for about 15% of global energy-related greenhouse gas emissions. And that may not seem like a huge amount, but that's just from its own operations, so extracting oil and gas from the ground, processing the fuels and delivering them to consumers, for example. A UN analysis released earlier this month showed that the planet is set to heat up by nearly 3 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. So if we're to stand any chance of limiting the rise in global temperatures to 1.5 degrees, the IEA says drastic measures need to be put into place. And what do those include? Well, the report is quite clear in what it wants from oil and gas players, and so the solution is twofold. It wants them to cut the pollution we mentioned earlier by more than 60%, something it says isn't too difficult, especially when it comes to methane emissions, and it needs to ramp up its investment in renewables, which currently only stands at about 2.5% of its total capital spending. It's interesting to note as well that the report says the oil and gas industry needs to let go of carbon capture as a solution to climate change because it's simply not adapted to the scale of its emissions. Over to Germany now, where the Finance Ministry is expected to propose a supplementary budget for this year. It froze spending across all ministries this week after the Constitutional Court ruled that the government's move to reallocate pandemic emergency debt was unlawful. Oliver Farry explains.
The German government announced plans on Thursday to get itself out of a tricky budget situation. The country's Constitutional Court had ruled last week that a plan to spend unused emergency funds from the pandemic on climate initiatives was unconstitutional. This left the government with a 60 billion hole in its budget, forcing it to manoeuvre.
In agreement with the Chancellor and Vice-Chancellor, I will present next week a supplementary budget for this year. We are now going to provide a constitutional basis for spending, in particular to curb electricity and gas prices.
The emergency budget, if ratified by the three-party coalition, should avert a crisis, pending a more permanent solution in the new year.
I consider it my duty to clear the decks. We can't talk about 2024 and beyond until we have a legally secure, constitutionally guaranteed situation.
It leaves Lindner and Germany in a potentially embarrassing situation at a time when they have been calling for greater fiscal discipline in European Union countries. Berlin has long railed against what it sees as fiscally irresponsible behaviour by other Eurozone members.
German GDP figures for the third quarter also out today, confirming an expected month-on-month contraction. GDP was down 0.8% on the previous year. And now for a glimpse at the markets, a mixed open in Europe as investors remaining cautious on Friday. They'll be monitoring a speech by European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde later on. Indexes trading just below the flat line. Also a mixed picture in the Asia region. The Nikkei climbing to a 4-month high, up about 0.5%, but all other indexes plunging. And we end in Sweden, where workers are taking on Tesla. About 130 mechanics who service the electric cars went on strike at the end of last month after Tesla turned down their request for collective bargaining. And the movement is picking up because 9 unions are now taking part in the blockade. So dock workers, bin collectors, electricians, and even postal workers now refuse to do any tasks related to Tesla. Founder Elon Musk has reacted to these strikes, posting to X on Thursday, calling them insane. And it's the postal work that's particularly angered him because it means the Swedish Transport Agency can't deliver license plates to new Tesla cars. So no new Teslas, Gavin, can be taken into use in Sweden at the moment.
Well, you can say many things about Elon Musk, but he's not a wallflower, is he? Many people in his position rely on layers of press teams. He goes straight to the point. Cammy Knight, thank you, on our business team. Well, to South Africa next.